Hello there, happy Money Monday, and welcome back to another episode of the Empowered and Abundant podcast. This week, I am joined by special guest Joanna Ingram. Joanna is a former advertising agency director turned messaging and positioning consultant who helps talented coaches, consultants, and healers clarify their brand message, elevate their authority, and attract premium clients who truly value their work. She's the creator of the 6-pillar premium messaging framework and host of Goals with Soul and the Soulful Catalyst podcast, which I had the pleasure of being a guest on that show. She's known for blending strategic expertise with energetic alignment to help her clients grow sustainable, fulfilling businesses without the hustle. And Joanna and I had such a great conversation on her show, The Soulful Catalyst, that I had to invite her to come be a guest on the Empowered and Abundant podcast. This conversation was so fun. I am so excited for you to tune in. So without further ado, sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's episode. Hello there, Joanna. Welcome to the Empowered and Abundant podcast. I am so excited to have you join us here today.
And I'm excited to be here, Scarlett. Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh. Well, we're going to dive right into this conversation because I am so excited for this topic and you're the perfect person to be having this conversation with. This is something that I talk about often with my clients who I'm already working with, but you as the messaging master, I'm excited to really explore this topic even further. And before we dive in, I would love for you to introduce yourself for everybody listening, let them know who you are and what you do.
Absolutely. So I'm a messaging strategist. I work predominantly with coaches, healers, experts, and consultants who need to articulate the value of what they do so they can upgrade their pricing, work with clients who light them up, access new visibility opportunities, and ultimately grow their businesses.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. And I think that messaging is so important when it comes to being a successful entrepreneur because it's how do I bridge that gap between taking what's in my head and my expertise that I know I have to offer and really communicating that effectively in order to bring those clients in and actually serve people the way I'm meant to serve them and also make the money. And I find that in my own work, our relationship with money, our money mindset plays a really big role in our ability to effectively communicate our messaging. And so I'm curious, like, is this something you've experienced in your work with your clients? Like, what way does money mindset show up and affect our messaging?
You make such a valid point here. And in a way, it's about understanding money as a broader energetic reality. Often, and I know you talk about this too, it's intrinsically linked with self-worth and validation. And so when it comes to owning your own business, oftentimes people pivot from corporate, as I did. I spent 20 years working for leading advertising agencies here in London. And you pivot into something meaningful, running your own business. And suddenly it's all exposing because your performance, many people, all of us at some point naturally equate that with the amount of money we are bringing in to the success, our self-worth, how we feel about the world. So of course, it's not a surprise that building our business and every iota of success, whether that's real or perceived, whether that's today or every month or every year, we start to now question, what do I need to do in order to get more money? And so, yeah, we're spot on this topic today, Scarlett, definitely.
Yeah, yeah. And something that I find myself talking about all the time is how when you work a traditional job, you actually can kind of skate by without paying as much attention to your relationship with money and as your money mindset because you are constantly receiving external validation in your job because basically someone else is saying to you, this is what you're worth, here's your paycheck. When you check these boxes and you do these tasks, like, yes, here you go, you're going to receive this money. But this is really, really different when you step into entrepreneurship because now you're setting your price, you're determining your price point, you're determining your value, and then you're asking people for that money. It's all on you. And so instead of this external sense of validation that you get in the workplace surrounding money. Now it is fully acclaimed, self-acclaimed, and that can really play a role in the way you speak about your offer, the way you talk about what you do. If there's any gunk under the surface of not fully believing that you're worth that price point, that you can deliver that value, and not fully being able to own your worth in a way that you didn't have to do when you came from a different job.
And that is so true. And it plays itself out in really distinct ways. A lot of clients that I work with will come to me typically undercharging, over delivering, and essentially getting all tied up with this: how do I serve more clients, but also create overflow, fun, and abundance for myself and my own business? And I've always come from the perspective that a successful business is a joyful, sustainable business, not just the revenue that you bring in. And yet so many people are planning just for the next revenue kick rather than how to sustain their business long term. And I always go back to the same point about this. Sustaining a business joyfully long term is all about managing your energy. And if you are over delivering with clients who drain your energy, and you're not charging what your work is really worth, you're going to consistently run into problems here. And you're going to fall out of love with your business, which I see with people 5 years, 10 years down the line who just want to burn it all to the ground. And often it's tied up with this mindset stuckness about how to approach the types of people they work with who are excited about investing their time, their money, and their energy into getting the results with you, which I always come back, it's about messaging. And I always come back to this positioning messaging piece, which is that when you are able to articulate the value of your work, in that case, people understand why they should invest with you, and far less objections around your pricing. It gives you the confidence to, as a niche of one, you're now able to set your pricing appropriately, which of course affects the amount of work that we do, because we're all in this business, or certainly anybody that's in entrepreneurship in general, and coaching and healing specifically. We're here as much as we can to avoid trading time for money. If we wanted to do a 9 to 5, we wanted to work overtime, we can go back to corporate, we can get those jobs. But instead, we want to work less hours, create more impact, and ideally more abundance and overflow. So yeah, all of those things are so linked, right, Scarlett, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I love the way that you touched on how, like, really this balance between time, energy, and money, and how those are all interwoven. And that's something that I speak to often, is if there's an imbalance in one area, it's going to show up in other areas. So for example, if your pricing is not in alignment with the energy and the time that you're pouring in, then that is what's going to lead to that burnout in the future. It's also not going to lead to the financial stability that is required in order to keep going with your business and to keep serving and to keep supporting yourself. And I love how you're tying this into messaging, because that is the bridge between how do we actually communicate this in a way where we are actively portraying the value so that we can sell it in a way where people can see the value of it and say yes to it more easily. And I find that, at least in my work with my clients, and I'm curious to see if you notice this, is a big block when it comes to messaging comes down to these mindset beliefs around our own self-worth, but especially around money as well. And so a lot of my clients are pricing their offers low and not in alignment with the true value and effort, because they have these underlying thoughts of, people aren't going to pay for it. I'm not worth this much money. I don't want to take money from people. It's like bad or wrong for me to take people's money. It's like harmful for me to do that, or no one's going to want to pay this much. And it's just these false or inaccurate, arbitrary money beliefs that tie into their own worth, their own value, and their beliefs about money and what people are willing to pay in general. And I find that changes how we actually show up in our messaging. Like, I've found that you can say all the right things, almost like you're reading a sales script, but yet when it's coming from this foundational belief of like, no one's going to pay for it, then the way that you say it and the way that it comes across is different. And that's what creates a major block in sales.
Oh my goodness, you've just raised so many important points. My mind's sparking off in several directions. So I really want to capture them because I think this is really, really key. First one, right at the beginning, you said something about, people get really worried about their worth and charging their worth. And, right early on, I've been doing this getting on for 6 years now. And I remember seeing a lot of messages early on saying things like charge your worth. And, I was in containers that said that. There was something about it, although it was well intentioned, that really rankled at me. And I realized that as I became a specialist, so originally I was doing much more generalized business coaching, but as I zeroed in on my specialism around messaging and repositioning and ideal client identification, I realized that the problem here is it isn't about your worth, it's the value of your transformational work. And as soon as you separate the two out, people can start to see clearly the value of their transformational work, because anybody that's, anyone that's doing a good job within their industry would have client results. You'd be able to see this is valuable. I can see what I'm doing and how I'm helping. And it's got nothing to do with my worth. You know what? Worry about your own self-worth and self-esteem. I think we all have work to do in those places. But if you're going to put doing all that work and solving that problem before you can tackle some inherent issues in your business, like raising your prices, no wonder you're going to struggle with that month after month and year after year. So in my work, I always separate the two. And we look at the value of your transformational work. And we look at articulating that in such a way that those people that you most want to work with are going to understand its value and are going to want to do that work. And to that point, I want to share about the energetic exchange of money and outcomes. Because you said something, Scarlett, about how people don't feel comfortable charging money for their services. And I think that's true. We've all been there to some degree. And we all, particularly, I think, for more spiritual, soulful coaches and healers who believe they have a natural gift, and it feels very uncomfortable to charge certainly high prices for that exchange. But how I approach that is that we're not charging money for our time, and we're not charging money for our service. We're simply entering into a value exchange of money and outcome. And when you realize that what you're doing is being rewarded or essentially paid for a singular or sometimes multiple outcomes that client needs, and you can help that client get them, well, no amount of money sometimes can really recompense the sort of results that people are getting, their life-changing results. And in my experience as well, clients, high-level clients who come in paying higher amounts, working with you for longer amounts of time and getting the most fantastic results, never look back and say, oh, I wish I hadn't have paid that much. They're always saying, oh my goodness, I've struggled with this for a really long time. I'm so grateful that I found someone that can walk alongside me and help me fix this problem in my life, in my business, in my health, in my finances. And I'm delighted to have done that work. And I think that's the key for each person, really evaluating how they show up energetically with confidence and set their pricing to match. And I know I'm wittering on, but there's one other thing I wanted to add before I forget, which is you called to this, Scala. And it's about how if you're not in alignment and you're not feeling confident about the price that you set, then you are going to come across with less confidence, and you have less likelihood that people are going to say yes. And you end up in a vicious circle. You're like, well, I pitched my higher price. They didn't say yes. They had a lot of price objections. So that's just telling me that I'm pitching myself too high and I need to lower my prices. I would say, aside from the fact that we need to get your messaging on point, reposition you so that you can articulate the value of your transformational work, which is the foundational piece, then we need to show up with confidence in our pricing. And it's that micro hesitation that when somebody says, oh, that sounds great. Yeah. How much is that? Or like, what pricing are your offers? And you take that micro pause, just a micro pause. I'll tell you something, people sense it. It's just like,
Yeah.
oh, interesting. And as you then come out, there's an apologetic energy that we as sensory human beings can just pick up on this so clearly. And there's a sales practice job there. And, there are sales coaches that do great work around scripting and practice. But I would say even fundamentally before that, it's just knowing and having that belief that what you are offering is so valuable, you stand by this pricing. And that, the three things I've just described are all linked. But when you get them, you're able to incrementally and in alignment raise your prices with confidence, with clarity, and show up and essentially command those prices, claim your space, right?
Yes, yes, I completely agree. And I think it really comes down to the fact that your messaging comes across differently when you genuinely believe it through and through, and not just believing in the value of the result and the transformation. I think that's one piece of work for a lot of people, is really seeing the value of your work, your service, the impact, the long-term impact. I think sometimes we create filters, and this can bleed into lack of self-confidence, self-doubt, and not really allowing us to see what is the impact. So first, really allowing yourself to see that impact, believe that impact, but then also align that with the value exchange that you that you described so well, of yes, of course it is okay for me to receive money for this. And the way that I like to frame it as well too for my clients is not only that it's okay for you to receive money for your services, because again, this can feel so uncomfortable when we do attach it to our worth, because what we're offering is us and we're so connected to it and passionate about it and we're heart centered. So, yes, peeling away those layers, like you described, of what you're offering, your business, your services, the results, they're different than you. And we need to separate our self worth from our business worth, our services worth. But the way that I like to look at it as well is that your price point is actually part of the value that you provide, because your price point is an opportunity for your clients to commit to themselves in a bigger way. And it gives them the opportunity to get to say yes to doing this work and get to say yes to the transformation and get to say yes to the results. Because I know when I first started my business 6 years ago, I definitely signed up for lots of free things. Or I remember I bought this bundle of courses. It was like 100 courses for $100. And the amount of actual value that I received from all of that value, I'm sure there was some really good stuff in there, but I didn't really follow through. I didn't do those free things. I didn't do all of those courses because I didn't have skin in the game. I wasn't committed. I wasn't invested. Versus as I've grown my own business, learning to invest more and more into my business, into my growth, into the results that I want to see. And for me, now I'm at the point where I'm grateful that I get to spend that money. I know when I invest in bigger and bigger ways, and when I purchase services for myself, I'm committing to those results. I'm saying yes to those results, and I show up differently when I'm raising myself up to match the price point. And so that's one perspective shift I like to give to my clients, is not only is your price point okay, your price point is actually you giving your clients an opportunity to step into a new reality by believing different things about themselves, by believing they're capable of investing that, by believing that they're capable of getting the results of what you provide, by giving them the opportunity to commit and follow through and show up in deeper, more powerful ways than they ever did before. And so you discounting or devaluing your offer is actually taking away that value and taking away that opportunity from your potential clients.
And it's so true. I mean, we've all heard the adage pay to play kind of thing. When you actually pay, you play. And you spoke about this really beautifully, how you have evolved into somebody who invests at a high level, really values and chooses carefully, uses discernment, and then goes ahead and gets the results. And in my world, I describe this as a premium client. That's who you are when you invest. And so many people who are looking to onboard clients are not focusing on their premium clients. So instead, they're targeting people with their messaging in the way that they show up with people who would invest $100 for 100 courses and bulk or worry at anything more than that. And the problem is here is that once you get yourself into growing an audience of, I don't know, tire kickers or, freebie seekers, you're going to really struggle to then extract yourself from that and instead switch into the ability to attract premium clients. And in my work, that is key. The amount of people that come to me and they're doing one-off $50, $100 sessions, and they tell me people won't pay more. This is my limit. They like one-off sessions. And the problem here is that they're just talking to the wrong people. And there's something called levels of marketing consciousness. I don't know if you've come across this before, but there are 4 levels essentially. You've got the reactive level at the bottom. These are people that respond to FOMO. They're the people that all the bro marketing tactics and the clickbait work for. They're the people that just think, oh my God, if I don't buy this, my life's ruined. I have to, everything's going to go wrong. They live in fear and scarcity. One step up from them, you've got the willful people. They're the people that are like, oh, if I just work harder and I just try and I'll just do this one more thing, I might get there. The problem is when we as entrepreneurs target either of those types of people or people at that level of consciousness, we are going to struggle at the higher price points because they are just not receptive. The answer isn't to push harder to those people, but instead to up level our offering, our messaging, our positioning, so we can instead talk to the higher levels of marketing consciousness, those being intuitive and intellectual. Now, both of those offer us amazing opportunities because people who are operating at those levels of consciousness are self-empowered, self-led, they can make decisions, they take action. Now, that's the kind of clients we want to work with because they're the clients that say yes, follow through, show up, follow the process, do the work and get the results. They're also the clients that are willing to pay at much higher levels if they feel that the offering and the energy and the messaging and everything you're putting out matches their expectations. And I think to that point, I just want to add that, I mentioned right earlier on about over delivery. And when I work with the sorts of clients I described who are showing up, working for $100 here and there, and they're working really hard and they're over delivering. When I put it to them that instead a single signature program can be developed for that higher level premium client. Oftentimes they've got one. Oftentimes it's not selling. Oftentimes we'll look at it. We'll be like, well, why are people booking little bits with you, but not really engaging with you at these higher price points for this longer length of time? We open the bonnet, right? We look behind and go, there is so much in this program. They throw the kitchen sink at it. And this is another example of a low sense of worth, because what we're doing is we're thinking, if I'm going to charge more, the people paying are going to expect more and I need to put more in. But here's the truth. Genuine premium clients, the ones I just described, we all know who they are. Those ones want to get there simpler, faster, and the less you give them, the happier they are, provided, of course, what you're giving them gets them the results. They don't want the frills and the fluff and the 100 courses for $100. They want one thing. They're willing to pay $100, $1,000, £10,000 for one thing that gets them the exact thing they need. And to that end, I mean, for my own journey, I moved out of being a generalist to become a specialist. And oftentimes with my own clients, I see that they're paddling in the big pool of generalists when they have such specialist skills. And when you can get the confidence to know that you can work with high-level clients who are earning more than you, who have achieved more than you, who you might be intimidated by, impressed by, when you realize that you have the one skill that they need to master this one missing thing that's going to change everything for them, that's the sort of energy that I work with in my work, because that's how we up level and we completely shift our results. Yes, we earn more money, but it comes from a base of no longer wanting to work harder, to over deliver, to stutter when we think of our pricing, to constantly be creating new offers because the other ones aren't selling. It's a complete shift, really, I think, of not just messaging, but the whole premium positioning of your business model.
Yeah. Ooh, I love this. And I totally agree. And I love the way that you outlined these four like layers or phases. And I haven't heard them before described in this way. But as you're describing them, I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. I've experienced this big time in my own business, but also in my own journey as well. And I think that really is the difference is when you're in this, I guess we'll just say lower level thinking, but that version of, okay, no one's going to pay for this. When you believe that within yourself, this is what I find is when you believe that within yourself, then those are also the people that you're attracting. And same thing for, okay, when you're going to step up into those higher level, higher ticket areas, you have to deeply believe that and resonate with that within yourself in order to actually be able to speak to those people and attract those people. And I think that this is a practice of how can you continue to see the value of what you're offering and even your self-worth, especially if you're attaching your self-worth to your offering as well, or being capable of saying like, yes, I'm worthy of receiving money into my life even if I'm delivering a high value service. I find that that's also a gap for people is, yeah, they can maybe see that their service is worth the money, but them within themselves, they still find reasons to repel money from actually flowing into their lives. And so for me, even my own journey, I see that the more that I invest in myself in that higher level way, the more that I believe, like, okay, yes, this is worth the transformation. This is worth the result. I'm seeing myself differently as I make investment choices in my business. Now, I believe in the value of paying more for premium services and the way I show up and the way I get the results for myself. Then it makes it easier for me to bring that into my own work and my own business and portray that and say, yes, I do see the value of what it is I'm offering. And therefore, and I've shifted the way that I think about it and think about money. And therefore, it's easier for me to actually say, yes, this is true. This is a premium service. It is worth this price point. I can get you the results. It will pay for itself. It will be worth it 10 times over. And I believe that there are those people out there who see that and are willing to pay for it. And so, yeah, I'm curious to hear if you have noticed that as well, if there's a difference between like knowing this conceptually but actually being able to believe it deeply, and how that might change the ability to actually step into this higher level of messaging and marketing and premium pricing.
And you make such a point. It's such an important point here. And I agree wholeheartedly. And it's, from an energetics point of view, my background, apart from the 20 years working for advertising agencies, I pivoted into pranic healing, breathwork facilitation. And now as a practicing messaging strategist, I'm always intrigued by the role that energy or mindset has in how we actually show up. And there's some people may have heard of Abraham Hicks. They've written some books and they've got a great podcast, but they talk about an energetic scale of about 22 different emotions. And some are denser, lower level emotions and some are lighter, higher level ones. And this is based on the idea that, as per the way that science is now going, that we're all made of energy. And that means we all have a frequency, and the frequency that we vibrate at, our vibe, is what the law of attraction is based on, essentially. And that means that how we show up and the energy that we're exuding attracts like for like. And I think even people that aren't into the woo can appreciate if you show up in a darn good mood, other people are magnetized towards you. And if you show up feeling grumpy with a sour look on your face, funnily enough, you are going to stub your toe. It's just the way it goes, right? So the way that I see this in business, it's really very simple. If you're showing up in your business and indeed in your life in the lower, denser level feelings, and we all do from time to time, and sometimes we get stuck in them, we get in the entrepreneurial dip, and that means we're in self-doubt, we're in worry, we're in maybe boredom even is at that point of really, this is not going to be attracting those high level premium energized clients. And when we start to transform into hopefulness, into interest, into, some of these, well, this is nice, I'm feeling in flow. And we all know what it's like when we get an idea that comes out of nowhere and we just cannot help ourselves. We sit down. And I mean, for me, it might mean building something on my website. I love a bit of tech, but it's like, it just comes through and it's unapologetic and you're in flow. You're creating a new offer. You've suddenly got this idea of what to say in an article. You've written an email. And that comes when we're in those higher levels of frequency. Now, you asked a really interesting question, Scarlett, which is like, I think you said something like, how do we? Like, how does it move out of theory and into practice? And I can share from my experience, from my own journey, and from those people that choose to work with me, because they're all very similar to me. We are overthinking, often midlife women, having spent 2 decades in corporate, now pivoted into heart-centered businesses. We believe in the woo side, the spiritual side, but we're also deeply intellectual and self-discerning. So it's very classic type of people that you'll find in this type of business. And the problem with us is that we get stuck in the overthinking. We're really, really good at the theoretical. You can teach it, but sometimes you're not quite feeling it and living it. And from that energetic frequency thing, I realized when I burned out in my business about 6-12 months in, I was just pushing myself so hard, over-proving, over-delivering, over-efforting. I was working with clients who weren't a great fit, as per my conversation earlier about, they're draining people because they're not showing up. They've always got scarcity issues or, worries. Great people, maybe you're just not the right service provider for them. And I know that I wasn't at that time the right fit. So it's about finding the better fit. So what did I do? I looked at the energy in my business and I realized that overwhelmingly it was on those lower, denser scales. Now, you can go into meditation and think your way into a higher scale. Wasn't working for me. I love meditation, but it's a practice. And you might actually want to change something in your business rather faster than a lifetime of learning how to meditate. But actually, you can do it simply by taking different actions. So doing more of the things you love and the less things that cause resentment and obligation. And oftentimes when you're over-delivering for clients, showing up, doing free stuff, you're feeling a lot of obligation and resentment. And it may also bleed into like some things outside of your life, because energetically, it isn't just a basket of business. We've got our kids, we've got our partners, we've got our parents, we've got our community, our homes, all of it going on, right? Our health, everything. So what we have to do is we have to find somewhere in our lives to do stuff that we just enjoy more. And for me, I took up pottery about 2.5 years ago. I took half a day out of my business every single week, and I still do, and basically started to become a ceramicist. Not only have I become quite an adept ceramicist, I absolutely love it, but it really changed how I felt, which meant when I did sit down to do the monotonous tasks or to service contracts that maybe were coming to the end of their life and I wasn't loving so much, I didn't resent it in the same way because I was just happier. And so that would be my initial advice. And how does that land for you, Scarlett? How do you interpret that in your focus around money in general?
Yeah, I love that. And I totally resonate and agree from my own journey. And especially to summarize what you said, it sounds like what I often describe to my clients is, in order to live your most abundant life, we need to start living it now. Because we often wait, like someday in the future, when I have more money, when I have more time, that's when I will start to get to do the things I want to do. I will get to enjoy my life more. I'll get to travel more. I'll feel different. My business will be different. I'll have more time off. But we need to start to create those feelings of abundance, enoughness, satisfaction, enjoyment, freedom, bliss. We need to create our abundant life starting right now, today, with the time we have, with the money we have. We need to bring that energy here into the present, because that's how we make our abundant life a reality. And so in order to do that, yes, with our actions, and I love that, it's so simple. It's with our actions. How do we act as our abundant self does by prioritizing the things that do bring us joy within our business and outside of our business, just zooming out and looking at our lives. But then also, how do we practice this regularly to deeply ingrain this identity, this mindset, and this belief system? Because the version of you who is acting as your abundant self, it's a lot easier to step into that belief of, I love what I do. Of course, people are going to pay for this. I see the value of what I offer. And I see that all of this bleeds together: the mindset, the emotions, the actions of how does your most abundant self live their life, run their business? What do they believe about what they're offering? What do they believe about money and worth and value? And when you bring that energy into your business, it changes the way you show up. It changes the energy behind the actions you're taking. It changes the energy and the tone behind the words that you say in your messaging. And when you believe in your value, your impact, your service, your life in a powerful way, that changes the way that you're able to sell clients.
It's so true. And what some of the things were dropping in for me there is about living your best life makes you so relatable to the people that you're meant to work with. I was thinking one summer, I basically decided that I was going to take every Friday off and I was going to experience micro holidays. So, I wasn't able to go abroad for a variety of reasons and do a long holiday, but I found all these outdoor pools around London. We call them Lidos, right? And so I decided every Friday I'd visit a different Lido. On my own, I would take a book, lie in the sun, swim in the water, have a cappuccino, just experience that lovely freedom of knowing that a few years ago I would be stuck in the office, right? And I'm not. I get to choose how I spend my time. And I started sharing at the time this stuff on Facebook. I was like, here I am at this Lido and here I am at this Lido. And I had ways of incorporating these sorts of things with my messaging. And I think there's ways for all of us to do that more. So we're not just, showing up on social media, but instead we are showing up in service of our businesses on social media, but in relatable ways. And interestingly, it solved two problems. Here I could have been sat at my desk going, what am I going to write for socials today? But instead I went out, lived my life, followed the breadcrumbs, and the problem solved itself. Right. And I think oftentimes we get really stuck with the how, when really we should be listening to the quiet voice of intuition, following the breadcrumbs, following our joy, hell, doing what just lights us up a hell of a lot more, and allowing the how to unfold as a result of those actions.
Yes. Oh, I love this. I love this. And so much magic has come out of this conversation. And let me see if I can loop this all back around. And that is that as you live your most abundant life and become your most abundant self, that feeds into sharing more value for your people, offering a higher level service because you're living in your alignment. And it also aligns with higher premium price points as well, and being able to sell those higher premium price points in a way where people receive them and are happy to pay you for them. And I think all of this ties together into everything we've talked about today. Oh my gosh. Joanna, thank you so much for this conversation. This was so valuable. These are things that I'm thinking about constantly in my business and find I'm often sharing with my clients, but it was so great to have this amazing back and forth in the podcast, because I think every single business owner, every single entrepreneur absolutely needs to hear this, because this is the foundation from just thinking about having a business and actually creating a business that is able to support you full time and help you live the life that you really want to live. So thank you so much for your time, your expertise, and for coming onto the show today.
My pleasure. I've just so enjoyed this conversation, Scarlett. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about where they can connect with you and just learn more and hop into your world?
Absolutely. If you want to learn more about my messaging work, you can find me at my website, joannaingram.com. And if you are a business owner, a coach, healer, consultant, and you'd like to sample my eyes on your business, I've got an opportunity to sign up for a messaging impact audit where you can simply understand where your messaging can be elevated, what the gaps are, and what the opportunities and priorities should be, so you can reposition your messaging to attract the kind of clients that you most want to work with. If you enjoy listening to what I'm chatting about, then you can hear me on 2 different podcasts. I host Goals with Soul, where I share mostly about my spiritual journey and messaging tips, and also the Soulful Catalyst, where the lovely Scarlett has been a wonderful guest of mine, where I share platforms for amazing people doing amazing work. So you can also tune in just to learn more about people in my world there too. If you love a social, you can find me on any of them. LinkedIn, Joanna Ingram, Facebook, Joanna Ingram, although I don't use that as much, or Instagram, I am jo.ingram. Lots of choices, but star the website if you're wondering.
Amazing. Perfect. And all of those links will be in the show notes below. So definitely go ahead and hop into Joanna's world, because obviously she is amazing. And everybody, thank you so much for listening. Thanks for taking the time to tune into this week's episode. Joanna, thank you again for being a guest on the show, and have a great rest of your Money Monday. And I will see you next week.